Hello! So I am back for reading number 2 of Daughters of Fire and Sea, my epic fantasy series. Still not getting used to where I should look into the camera. But yeah, so we left off with the ending of chapter 1, and Lyric and Runa's mother appeared. And I did not bring my daughter's clock this time, but I also realized last time that my phone is counting. So I can see how long this takes. Anyway, so let's just see how far we get. I haven't, tried to time this, so we'll see. Yeah, I'll try not to be as long as last time either. Anyway, Daughters of Fire and Sea, Chapter 2, Runa. Runa stared at their mother with a mixture of anger and elation. Elena was here, alive, not rotting in the woods somewhere or bones at the bottom of a stream. She was here. Glancing at her sister, Runa saw joy and love lighten Lyric's face. She was crying, tears rolling down her cheeks and dripping off her chin onto the floor. Everything was forgiven. Mother was home. Runa bit the inside of her cheek, and a sudden pang cleared her head. No, everything was not forgiven. Where had she been? Why had she come back? Runa picked herself off the floor and rose slowly, staring at their mother. She didn't smile, her teeth clenched behind her lips, when Elena's face shifted from stern confusion to relief to happiness, a mirror of Lyric's. Runa frowned. What was it their mother had said? You're both here? Marlena? Kel asked, his voice confused. There was recognition in his face. Runa narrowed her eyes, glancing between them. Elena, their mother said quickly. A warning replaced the unrestrained emotion on Elena's face as she eyed Kel carefully. You know each other? Lyric asked. Her giddy smile slipped as she tried to understand. Then she gasped and rushed at Elena. Your arm, she said. Runa looked at Kel, searching his face for clues. He knew her mother, likely them as well. Why had he pretended not to know who they were? Anger flared, then faltered as she smelled burning flesh. She looked at Elena, stepping towards her despite the tangle of emotions constricting her chest. Oh, Elena said absently, lifting her arm. Yes. You're on fire, Runa said, eyes flaring in alarm. Could Elena not feel the heat on her skin, the pain? The sleeve of their mother's jacket was shoved up above her right elbow, and across the top of her forearm danced a line of blue flame. Runes were tattooed beneath it, its shape distorting as the flesh burned. Elena slapped at it with her free hand, mindless of injury to her fingers, until Lyric threw a towel over her arm and smothered the fire. Thank you, Lyric, Elena said. She removed the towel and examined her burned arm. The skin was a horrible red, blistered and blackened, her tattoo gone. Kel, eyes wide, stared at Elena as if madness had taken her. Grabbing bandages and ointment from the cabinet, Lyric backed their mother into a chair and began to clean and wrap Elena's arm. She shot a worried look at Runa. This will scar, Lyric said uncertainly. Elena nodded, whatever pain she might be feeling absent from her face. I had to hurry, she said. Anger, familiar and deep, boiled up from inside Runa's chest, and she glared ferociously. Where have you been? She demanded. We thought you were dead. I'm sorry for that, Elena said, her eyes shifting from regret to impatience to something not unlike fear. She looked at Runa's face as though it was the first time she'd seen it. I wasn't expecting you to be here. Elena might as well have stabbed a knife into her chest. Sorry to disappoint you, Runa growled, but I would never abandon her too. Rue, Lyric said, her voice chastising. No, that's not... Elena rubbed her head. They said they'd kidnapped you. They? Runa asked. Elena stood up, waving away Lyric's ministrations and finishing the wrapping of her arm. Her eyes dropped to Runa's open collar, to the runes on her skin. Runa died, Mama, Lyric said. The tone of Lyric's voice made Runa look at her. Her sister's eyes were full of worry and fear. It was always so easy to see what she thought and felt. Even if Runa didn't have the constant sensation of her twin's emotions brushing across her skin, she'd always know what was in Lyric's mind and heart. It was something she loved about her, and something she hated. Someday, Lyric's compassion would hurt her in ways Runa would be unable to prevent. No, Elena said. Runa looked back at their mother, frowning as Elena shook her head. Stepping back, Elena angled her body away and ran her hands over the bottles attached to her belt. Several were broken. She cursed, then strode out of the kitchen to one of the windows that faced the prairie. Runa glanced at Lyric. who met her eyes with confusion. What was going on? Marching back into the kitchen, Elena stepped up to the stove and reached for the fire poker, hefting it in her hand before returning it to its place against the wall. "You're here," she said, looking at Runa. "So you're not dead. They must have your body." She looked at the runes again on Runa's chest and blew a breath between her teeth. Obviously, they bungled things. Her eyes sharpened accusingly. "You learned how to—" "No." Elena shook her head. "That's not possible." Baring her teeth in frustration, Runa gestured with her hands, her fingers clawing the air. "Damn it, Mother! Learned how to what? What's not possible? Who are you talking about? Who did this to me?" Elena scowled, likely not appreciating Runa's cursing. "You're alive, Runa," she said. "Your soul has been pushed out of your body." Kel bumped the table, drying Runa's eyes. He opened his mouth, maybe to ask a question, then he shut it again. Was he afraid of Elena? Runa narrowed her eyes. How did Kel know her? Why did he know her? Her eyes moved back to track their mother. Elena moved around the kitchen, restless, looking out windows and staring into corners as if she expected something to jump out from the cracks in the wall. She shoved up the sleeve on her undamaged arm and checked a device strapped around her wrist. It was a timekeeper. How had she earned enough money for one of those? "We need to go," Elena said, addressing the room. "They'll be coming here." "Who are they?" Runa demanded. She slammed a fist into the table, her hand passing through the wood without a sound. Elena lifted her head, her eyes disapproving. "Perhaps," Lyric began, always the peacemaker. "We're not 15 anymore, Mother," Runa said, interrupting her. "You can't keep things from us and order us around. We've been living on our own for 4 years. "Yes, I realize that," Elena said. Her eyes blazed, but her voice remained cool, controlled. "I will answer what I can, but first we need to leave. Go somewhere safe. Someone dangerous is trying to draw me out, and they'll be coming here. They'll know I've arrived by now, just—" Their mother closed her eyes, and pain flickered across her face. "Please trust me." Opening her eyes again, Elena looked at Runa imploringly. Their mother seemed tired, worried, stretched thin. Runa's anger faltered as she watched their mother's eyes. Perhaps Elena's life had not been easy since leaving. Maybe something or someone had prevented her from coming back. What if she hadn't left because she wanted to, but because she'd been forced? A crack opened in Runa's heart, and for a moment she wanted to forgive everything. She wanted to rush over to their mother and hug her. She wanted to feel small again, protected. She wanted— No, Elena had to first explain if she desired absolution. A mother didn't just walk away from her children. A mother didn't abandon her family. Runa looked at Lyric and stared into her sister's wide, conflicted eyes. "Fine," Runa said. "Where do we need to go?" Relief washed over Elena's face, and she stepped forward, holding out her hands. Lyric, dropping the bandages, immediately grabbed one hand. Runa frowned, staring at the calloused palm of their mother's other hand, and reached for it slowly. "Kel," Elena said, "grab my shoulder." She waited as he shifted forward and rested a hand on her. Kel looked at Runa, catching her suspicious frown. He flushed and looked away. "This is going to be unpleasant," Elena said cryptically. "Don't let go." The air charged unnaturally, and the last thing Runa heard was Kel. "Wait, my staff!" Chapter 3. Runa. The wind howled like an otherworldly beast, ripping through Runa's hair as she stared out at an ocean of dark blue water. She was standing on a large platform of jagged black stone that jutted over crashing waves. The sea felt angry, not at her, but at the stone beneath her. The water pounded again and again against the cliff, and vibrations hummed against the soles of her bare feet. Wait, how did I get here? Runa frowned at the unfamiliar landscape. She'd been at home with Lyric and with the songsmith. Kel, that's right. They'd been talking, and she'd shown him the runes on her chest, and then their mother had arrived. A memory of their conversation drifted back to her, and Runa turned around, looking for Lyric and Kel and Elena. Where were they? There was a castle behind her, a massive structure of spikes and night-black stone, rising into a sky that was— Wait, where was the sky? Something else rippled overhead, gray and filmy like fabric. She should feel afraid, shouldn't she? Was it odd that she didn't? Runa was comfortable. All the frustration and anger and hopelessness of the past 6 months was softened, watered down, like her emotions were on the other side of a deep pool of water, and all she felt was their echo. Runa stepped backward, her heels scraping against a sharp edge of stone. She looked down, surprised by the sensation. She could feel. It hurt. "You're a small thing, aren't you?" a sharp voice said, disapprovingly. Runa turned around, surprised but not alarmed, and found an old woman standing between her and the edge of the cliff. She was small, like Runa, and had a cross expression on her face, her lips twisted and thin. Her eyes were dark, almost black, and they glared out from beneath graying brows that slashed down over them. She had a presence that made Runa feel like a small rodent frozen in the shadow of a hawk's sharp claws. This woman commanded and expected to be obeyed. Her thick white hair hung in 3 braids over her shoulders, the snowy strands twisted around small blood-red gems. She was wearing a black dress, long and fitted with a high collar. Pinned over her throat was a silver dragon, its wings outstretched, giving the impression that she had spikes jutting out from either side of her neck. Runa felt a combination of unease and awe, but the emotions were distant. She knew she needed to be cautious of this woman, but not fearful. "Who are you?" Runa asked. She was proud of how clear and strong her voice was. No one would bully her, not even this strange woman with dangerous eyes. "I am Eleonora," the woman said. She eyed Runa with disdain, sniffing as she noted her simple dress of gray wool and her unbound hair. Her eyes lingered on Runa's bare toes, then lifted back to her face. "I don't know where my shoes went," Runa said, feeling like she had to explain. "I haven't thought about my feet much. No reason for it. I haven't felt any sensations in a long time." She frowned. Why was she confiding in this stranger? "You're a shade," Eleonora said, as though excusing Runa's indecorum. Then she sniffed and folded her hands. "But appearance always matters, especially for a princess of the Scorched Court." Runa frowned, eyeing the woman's arrogant face. Was she making fun of her in some way? "I'm the daughter of a village wise woman," Runa said. Eleonora laughed, a harsh and discordant sound. "A what?" she asked. "A soldier, perhaps, or a pirate. That girl was always a handful." "That girl?" Runa asked. She eyed Eleonora. Clearly the woman was confused. Eleonora sighed, disappointed. "Your mother, Elena de Elena. Really, child, she never told you?" She sighed again and sent a look skyward towards a strange rippling grayness. "I see this will take longer than expected." Her eyes narrowed and she refocused on Runa's face. "You are not from some backwater village, girl," Eleonora said. "Your blood is the blood of dragons, of Rendishar. You are a burner, a Rendisharan mage." The old woman pursed her lips. "At least you will be, once I'm done with you." What?" Runa asked. What in hell's name was she talking about? She'd heard of Rendishar before. It was a harsh coastal country, as far east as you could get from Khalees without walking into the Sea of Screams. Rendishar was at war, wasn't it? With the Sireni? They boarded the tainted shore. Abruptly, the small woman loomed in front of her, and Runa bit her tongue in surprise. Her heart thudded in her chest, and she nearly reached up and covered it with her hand, marveling at the sensation. She could feel her heart again. What was going on? She was still a ghost, still unmoored from her body, but something was changing here. Runa felt solid, more alive. "I'm going to help you," Eleonora said. She smiled a fierce, dangerous smile. "I'm going to teach you." "Teach me?" Runa asked. Eleonora sighed. "Find your head, girl," she said. "I'll quickly tire of you if you're going to echo everything back at me. I'll talk to you again after—" Everything disappeared. Runa blinked, her eyes trying to adjust to the lack of light. She was cold, and the air stank like something was rotting nearby. "Ugh," she said, staring into the dark. The ornery old woman was gone. Had she dreamed it? Their conversation had felt real as whatever this place was. Who was Eleonora, and why did she think their mother was from Rendishar? Had Runa just spoken to one of the old demigods who disappeared from the world? She was clearly not one of the Trinity, but perhaps... Runa? She spun at the sound of her sister's voice. Lyric stood behind her, her shape barely visible in the gloom. Just a moment. That was Elena's voice, their mother. She said something else that Runa didn't understand, and then dim light flared overhead. Looking up, Runa saw an orb of light about the size of an apple. There was another above Lyric's head, who stared up at it with undisguised wonder, another over Kel, and a fourth above Elena. "There," Elena said, running her fingers over something on her belt. She lifted her head and looked around expectantly. Runa, following her gaze, saw nothing but endless darkness in all directions, the inky ground, empty and featureless save for the occasional edge of white rock illuminated by their light, was slick beneath her feet. Taking a step away from her, Lyric bent down and touched one of the rocks half embedded in the ground. "It's pitted, like old bone," she said, surprised. The light above Lyric's head followed her as she moved, and Runa stared up at the one above her own head again. It was magic, wasn't it? Their mother had done magic. She shot Elena a suspicious look, which their mother accepted with a raised brow. Where are we? Lyric asked, before Runa could voice the question herself. This place has many names, Elena said, but the most common name is the Vale. This place is what separates the living world from the dead. Old stories filled Runa's head as her imagination conjured unseen specters in the dark. Where ghosts go, Runa said. She wet her lips, her skin growing cold. Was it dangerous for her to be here? Bodiless as she was, what would happen if she accidentally crossed over into the underworld? Why bring us here? She asked, feeling a small needle of panic. Elena eyed her, concern and something else filling her eyes. It's the perfect place to stash a body and hold it in stasis, their mother said. Your body's here, somewhere. When I learned they'd kidnapped you, I started looking. I was afraid they'd take Lyric next, so I decided to get her and I found both of you. She looked at Lyric and Runa and then Kel. Something inscrutable passed between them before Elena's eyes returned to Runa. We're together now, so that we can focus on reuniting you with your body. Runa narrowed her eyes, observing Kel and their mother. She opened her mouth to ask how they knew each other, but Lyric spoke into the silence. How did you bring us here, Mama? Lyric asked. Her face was puzzled, her green eyes filled with questions. Runa thought back to her strange conversation with Eleonora. Why had the woman focused on her? Why not Lyric? Should she tell their mother what had happened? She looked at Elena's impassive face and felt resentment rise in her throat. She's a mage, Runa said, her voice flat. A burner. She watched their mother's face and caught a faint flicker of surprise. Lyric blinked rapidly, her brows nodding over her eyes. A what? No. How do you know? Runa shrugged one shoulder, earning an irritated huff as Lyric crossed her arms. Her sister looked at their mother and tapped a finger against her lips. The tattoo, the lights, us coming here. When did you learn how to do this? She frowned, perhaps unsure if she should be impressed or annoyed. Is that what you've been doing, learning magic? Lyric asked. Since you left? I think she's always been one, Runa said. You're from Rendishar. Again, there was no denial in their mother's eyes. Ru, how do you? Lyric said. Can we talk about this later? Elena asked. They can follow us here. They, Runa said flatly. Again with the mysterious they. No, Mother, I think it's time you tell us what's going on and who you are. Can we even trust you anymore? I'm not sure. Kel, an uncertain smile on his face, stepped forward. I think your mother is just trying to protect you, he said. We're not children, Kel, Runa said. No, of course. Kel awkwardly stepped back. He scrubbed a hand through his hair, looking chastised. Runa resisted the urge to roll her eyes as Lyric laid a hand on Kel's arm and smiled reassuringly. He's not one either, Runa wanted to say. My father is king of Rendishar, Elena said. There was a challenge in her eyes, one that Runa met with a firm-eyed stare of her own. Thanks to Eleonora, whoever she was, this was not as shocking as it would have been. Kel's eyes snapped back to Elena's face. Was that something he hadn't known? King, Lyric breathed, dropping her hand from Kel's arm. You're She stopped speaking, head tilting. Hasn't Rendishar been at war for hundreds of years with the Sireni? Why was Lyric asking about the Sireni, Runa thought, looking at her sister. About sailors? Yes, Elena said, her lips thinning. Why? Lyric asked. Over what? I've heard stories. About Sereth and the Three? Elena asked. Yes, that is likely why the war began. Rendishar claimed Sereth and her Sireni acted with cowardice in the Demon War, and the Sireni contended that it was the dragons and their human armies who abandoned Sereth. Today, the war continues because of my father's aggression and the desire of some of the Sireni to reclaim land they believe is sacred. Land? Runa asked incredulously. What do they care for land? There's a story that the ground beneath Rathgar's hold, Rendishar's capital, was once a tideland where Sereth held court. Those who want the land returned believe Delbacon the Black built the city there to spite them and Sereth. Over the years, peace has been brokered and broken many times. Broken? Lyric asked. Runa steadied Elena's face. There was something in their mother's eyes. Disgust? Horror? Guilt? My father, under the guise of peace, invited the Sireni Council, their Gales, to meet south of Rathgar's hold. Understandably suspicious, they sent a Gale's daughter to represent them. My father killed her, just because he could. Her eyes flashed, anger boiling inside them. Runa stared at her. So their mother had lied about their family. They had a grandfather, and he was a murderer. She was young, like I was, Elena continued. After it happened, I left and tried to get as far from Rendishar as I could. I ended up in Alay's Hollow and met Mistress Serena, and fell into the role of the village wise woman when she passed. Several years after that, your father... Her voice cut off, and she licked her lips, looking down at her hands. "And then I had you," she said. Their mother looked back up and offered a small, pained smile. "My girls." Runa looked away, unsure of what to feel. "Did your father, our grandfather, know where you went?" Lyric asked. "No," Elena said. "I didn't realize that my leaving would intensify the war." "He used your disappearance to claim the Sireni retaliated," Runa said, clenching her fists. "If he wanted the war to continue, he thought they killed you, or said so." "I was made aware of this, and was convinced to return home," Elena said. She looked angry and sad. Her eyes glinted, and Runa thought she might cry. Instead, Elena straightened. "I would never have left you if it had been possible to protect you in Calise. There wasn't time to leave a note, and honestly, I'm not sure what I'd have said. No child deserves that, to feel abandoned, and I know you must hate me, but I truly thought I did the right thing. I still don't see a better path I could have taken." Anger and pain warred inside Runa's chest. Her lungs were tight, and it hurt to breathe. Did their mother, Elena, have any idea how they'd felt when she disappeared? How Runa waited, night after night on the porch, watching for her, wondering if she was injured or lost? Had she considered how long Lyric cried, or their terror when days stretched into weeks, into months, into years? Had she thought about how they'd try to find her? Runa wanted to hate her, wanted to yell at her to leave them alone, tell her that they were better off without her, but she couldn't. After everything that happened, she still couldn't hate her. Before their abandonment, Runa had never doubted their mother loved them. Elena had never been cruel, not once. "You don't see a better path that you could have taken," Runa repeated back, her voice cold and flat. "Maybe if you'd stayed, we would have been prepared when they came for us. Someone tried to kidnap us, because you're the daughter of a barbaric, warmongering king. They're trying to flush you out. Why do they want you so badly? And if you were so careful protecting us, how did they find out about us?" Guilt flashed across their mother's face, clear as day, and then anger rushed in to replace it. Did she know who'd betrayed her? Runa felt a heartless flicker of satisfaction. "Are you the heir?" Lyric asked, "to the Rendesharin throne?" Their mother's jaw tightened. "I am now," she said. "There were 5 of us, 2 older and 2 younger. They're all dead now, casualties of war. The Sireni know I'm the only one left. They know I'm not with my father, so they're hunting me. I've evaded them, which is why they decided to grab us," Runa said. Elena dipped her head in acknowledgement. "Even without me, if the Sireni have you or Lyric, then they have a legitimate claim to the Rendesharin throne and a seat in the Scorched Court. They could marry you to a Sireni captain, or..." She paused. "Or they could use you to persuade King Rakarn to cede the city in exchange for your lives." Runa glanced at her sister. She couldn't feel Lyric's emotions here, not like at home, but as usual her thoughts were plastered all over her face. Lyric wanted to help their mother and get involved in the war. She never could stand the thought of someone dying, not if she could prevent it. Dangle a sad, bloody story in her face, an estranged grandfather, and Lyric wanted to rush off and fix everything. Perhaps Elena could still read her brown-haired daughter too, for she stepped forward and grabbed Lyric's shoulders. "I don't want to bring you into this," she said earnestly. She looked at Runa, including her. "I don't want this war, my father, to dictate your lives, your future. We'll recover your body, Runa, restore your soul, and then we'll..." "What?" Runa interrupted. "Skulk away to another little village, hide in the forest? We can't go back to Alaise Hollow. The Sireni know we exist now." "We can't walk away from this," Lyric said, putting a hand on their mother's arm. "We won't let you do this alone." "Do what lie? Hide?" Runa asked. She smiled, a tight twist of her mouth, as fury flashed across their mother's face. "Perhaps we should start moving again?" Kel asked, drawing everyone's attention. He cleared his throat as Runa stared at him. "I realize there's a lot here, a lot to go through, but if we are being pursued..." He gestured at the darkness around them. "Yes, you're right," Lyric agreed. Lyric looked at Kel for longer than was necessary, and then stepped back from Elena, hiding a slight blush by shoving her hair behind one ear. Kel and Lyric were both right. It didn't make sense to escape whoever was after them only to stand idly in one spot. It was a stupid move, and Runa was irritated at herself. There were still many unanswered questions, but they did not have to stand still for her to ask them. "Yes," Elena said, sounding relieved. She rummaged in a pouch at her belt and withdrew a round object. Lifting her hand, she held it flat in the center of her palm. It looked like a compass, with a thin black shard fixed to the top. "What is that?" Runa asked, curious despite herself. She moved closer, watching as the shard spun wildly, wobbling on a pocket of air beneath it, and then pointed fixedly over Kel's shoulder. "That's a shard of demon bone," Kel said, his gaze tight to Elena's hand. He looked up at her. "Where did you get this?" "It's a compass," Elena said, "to find the way station." "There are way stations here?" Lyric asked, her eyes widening. "You mean people come here regularly?" "Often enough that you can find the services you need if you know where to look," Elena said. She looked at Runa. "A friend of mine discovered that a pair of Sireni screamers brought a girl's body into the Vale. It fit your description. We need to talk to her, find out if she's located where they are." Their mother looked between the three of them. "We need to buy food, supplies." "Supplies?" Lyric asked. "How long will we stay here?" She stared away into the dark. "Does anything grow here?" "Not a lot," Elena said. She looked at the compass with a distracted expression. "Let's go. You can resume your interrogation later." She gave Runa a half smile, but Runa just stared at her until she looked away. Lyric moved up beside her. "Be nice," she whispered. "She came back, Rue. Doesn't that mean something?" Runa scowled. Did it? Could they move past everything? Especially now, knowing their mother had been alive? Had Lyric forgotten how hard the past 4 years had been? "This way," Elena said, unaware of Runa's thoughts. She shot a glance backward, catching the three of them with her enigmatic eyes, and then without waiting for confirmation, set off at a brisk pace. Runa had no choice but to follow. And I think we will end there. So next week I will continue with chapter 4. So we have now moved from Alay's Hollow to the Vale, which is not depicted on this map because obviously, it's a place overlaid across the living world, so I cannot show you the location. So exciting things, hopefully. And I look forward to continuing the rest of this journey with you. And hopefully you enjoyed the reading. If you're impatient and want to continue, there are links to my website below where you can find out where to get a copy of the books yourself. And so again, Daughters of Fire and Sea, my first epic series, first published book, and it is just fun to return to it. Working on the final book now, which is why I'm doing this reading. And then anyway, okay. Well, I hope that you have a awesome weekend, since I'm probably going to post this on Friday, yes. So have an awesome weekend and get to read lots of good books and eat yummy food. I don't know. I'm always thinking about snacks. Okay, anyway, I will see you again next week. All right, bye.